Hello and welcome back to Council Watch. I was rather looking forward to the personnel meeting. One of the agenda items sort of stood out from the others, and it basically said item 34, and it talked about the relationship between councillors and staff. I thought, that's a bit odd. That'll be worth watching. So basically, sometimes the staff and the councillor relationship is a bit strained, sort of gets a bit frosty, that sort of thing. So I was well up for watching it until the day of the meeting when that agenda item miraculously vanished. The original one said this, and that was replaced by this. Basically, they just took item 34 out and moved all the others up. I thought that was a bit odd. But clearly something had been going on. You can always tell in the council meetings when things behind the scenes have been kicking off, because everybody sits there with a really frosty face, and a few of the councillors and officers really look on edge. Others sit there quite happy, and obviously it's going to go zooming over their head and they're not going to get involved with it. That's perfectly normal. But it was really strange the way the agenda item disappeared. And I noticed in the preamble this particular bit.
And staff and attendants are Lauren Elliott, Senior Project and Committee Clerk, and Sarah Foote, Acting Town Clerk and RFO.
Acting Town Clerk and RFO. Responsible Financial Officer.
29. Declarations of interests and dispensations. 29.1 to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary, other registrable and non-registrable interests, and of bias and predetermination from councillors. Do we have any? Nope.
Yeah, that little bit about predetermination has crept in again. They don't always have that in. It just pops up every now and again. I'm assuming that pops up whenever there's going to be a problem with something one of the council members wants to say. You know, they've made their mind up before a meeting. Agenda items can be obviously put in by any of them, but my guess is that someone's put something in that the others don't want to talk about in public. And there was a little bit of a comment about, we can deal with this in the confidential setting. The confidential thing is becoming a bit of a joke. Every single thing of interest goes into it. I mean, in this particular meeting, and I'm not going to bore you with much of it, every single thing that you would want as a member of the public to know what's going on was in secret. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Some of the things that they talk about in confidential are not really confidential. The theme might be confidential, so they move the whole thing into the confidential setting, even if there are no legal or other sort of technical reasons why they shouldn't be aired in public. And it happens all the time. But if you look at some of the faces, and I've taken a few stills of people's expressions, and this little bit, if you look in the background, I'll play this one again. If you look in the background while Christian is speaking, I don't know whether it was a mouse that ran across the room or someone got an electric shock, but I thought that was quite funny. So, are there any other things going on council-wise? Well, do you remember that Tingdene thing? Well, the Tingdene thing, the fenced-off area on North Deans, that's exploded again. So, I don't know if anything's changed down there. I mean, what I'm going to try and do is pop down there at some point when I'm less crazy than I am at the moment, and I'll have a look around and see if anything's changed. I mean, I suppose the problem with it is that fencing is temporary fencing. Harris fencing that's down there is meant to be up for a short time. That's what it's designed to do. And that's been up for such a long time that bits of it have gone wobbly. There's huge sections that are rusty and nasty. So it looks like a junk heap. And I think that's probably what's causing a lot of the problems. The area is meant to be nice and pleasant for people to walk in. And even though Tingdene are totally within their rights to fence it off, because after all, they've got the lease on it, they can do what they like. It does look a bit of a like a rubbish dump, really. So no doubt, I think that makes people wonder, if you're going to fence it off, why don't you at least make a decent job of it rather than just leave it looking a bit like a tip? But, I suppose it's their land now and they can do what they like. The legal stuff concerning this has been going backwards and forwards. It must have cost an absolute fortune for the legal advice that the council have to keep getting to deal with this thing. So you would think, like they promised, that they'd make some sort of public statement, which they haven't done. It's been a very long time now that we've been talking about the North Deans issue, and it's not getting any better, and it appears to have taken off yet again. So really, the council's official opinion should really be known. Put it out there, sort it out, and then people can move on. But every time it's talked about in the famous secret sessions again. So we don't know what's going on. We have no idea what they're doing behind the scenes about it. They seem to be a bit narked. But in the personnel meeting today, people were all a bit grumpy. One weirdness that I did notice was Christian Newsom is the chair of this meeting, yet practically all of the information came from Andy Pearce. Andy Pearce, although he's not the chair of the meeting, he's the one that knows all the info. Virtually every statement that was made by any of the councillors, Andy had the information. How does he sort of become in charge of all things financial? It's a bit strange, isn't it? But there we go. So there was no bad behaviour, none at all. It was perfectly civil. But my God, was it frosty. The looks on people's faces were sort of, let's just get through this and get into private because we can't say anything. Nobody knew whether they should smile or grimace. It was really weird. All those people sitting there with these impassive faces, just trying to get to the end of the general business so they can nip across into confidential and talk about what they're all there for. It is becoming a habit, They're using the actual act that allows them to do things in private to talk about anything they like in private, even if those things are public. We've got no say in this whatsoever. One of the things that I smiled about was Andy looking at the minutes and the minutes of the confidential note at the beginning. So basically you have minutes of the main meeting. In the confidential setting, it's a confidential note of what happened. So that's not really like proper minutes. They don't actually list them that we can see. They just have a chat and someone makes a note. But some of the things they were talking about were about the staff. So the staff presumably had to leave the confidential meeting and leave the councillors to write the note. And then they were talking about that. It's all a little bit cloak and dagger. And it's getting worse. I don't know if you've noticed on the website, but all mention of the old town clerk that was on the old website is gone. So we still appear to have an acting town clerk, but the real town clerk has gone. Presumably she is no more. She's an ex-town clerk. And at some point maybe they'll sort it out. It does seem a bit strange, doesn't it? So there we go. That's what's been going on this week. Nothing in the meeting worth really watching, apart from just me commenting on the secrecy aspects yet again. And as I've always said, I understand personnel, they have to keep things secret. But some of the things that they're talking about are nothing to do with the legal stuff at all. I suppose they could be. I mean, they might be having a right slanging match behind the scenes. And maybe they're sort of having to sort of take advice on that. I don't know. That would be something we wouldn't be allowed to know. But as so much of the council's current activities takes place in secret, I do wonder why they worried so much about the live stream, because for the last few months there's been nothing in it at all. Everything of consequence is done in secret, and that's bad. Anyway, that's enough for today. Talk to you on the next one. See you soon. Hopefully when all the alterations in this building are done and I can hear myself think. I've come in really early this morning to do this video, because in about 10 minutes there'll be people with drills and bashing concrete. So it's been a nightmare here. So see you on the next one. Look after yourselves. Take care.